Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of Conversations with a Passion Pilgrim. Today we are welcoming Jette, and she's calling in all the way from Berlin, Germany. So we're just waiting for her to come on now. She's just got to join with me. And yeah, like all of these conversations, I haven't prepared anything. I'm really just interested in having an off-the-cuff conversation with the Passion Pilgrims that we find in our community. So a little bit of a background on Jette. I found her just through a group of friends from the real world. Oh, there she is. And yeah, I found her through a group of friends in the real world, but we actually have never met face to face in like the physical form. And so we've met face to face over technology. Yeah, we've hung out a lot online, and she's really she's just a really cool soul. There she is. Hey, it's so funny. I'm like getting onto this live, and I'm like, fuck, what should I say? Like, I haven't, because I never prepare anything for these chats.
Yeah.
So it's always super awkward when you like first get on the live and you're like, oh yeah, I have to introduce this person and what's going on. But because I wrote that post about you and kind of introduced what you were saying about embodiment. But yeah, just that awkward time where I'm like, what's going on? So yeah, welcome. How are you?
Ask me things I've never thought about probably, and I have to like present myself, introduce myself, and yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah,
I like.
I love your earrings.
Thank you. I bought those in Mexico a few years ago.
Yeah, I really love them.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, it's so this is only episode 3 of this new series, and basically what I'm loving about these conversations is just one, I love that I know really real awesome people that I can invite on, whether I know you, like, I mean, we haven't met in like real life, but we've been meeting in the online world for like a few years now and know people in the real world. Just checking. Oh, there you are. Okay, cool. And then yeah, other conversations I've had or been with people that I don't know that well, and it's funny because we know each other, but not super well. So I'm kind of excited to dive into some stuff and hear a little bit more about your story and have you share with people what's really coming through for you today. So no pressure. There's nobody that you have to be. I just think that you're sparkly, and that's why I want to share you with everybody else. So usually not a whole sign on for these. A lot of people do watch them afterwards. So it's kind of nice because we just get to talk about, you know, as if it's just the two of us. And then like if a bunch of people watch later, it's no worries. So
Cool.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
Much. Yeah. You say we don't really know each other, but I feel like your sharing is so vulnerable and it's so open that I feel like I've learned a lot about you just by following you and yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. And likewise too, because yeah, for those of you that don't know you, it's like I feel like I feel you, you know? Like even though we haven't spent like endless hours on the phone, there's like an essence of the other person, you know? Like I feel like we understand each other, and like there's just something about our connection that's like, it's like we understand each other even though we've never really hung out. And there's this element of like, okay, I know she's like a deep communicator, a deep feeler. You know, we've definitely communicated about our roller coasters a couple times, or like, you know, kind of what's going on in our personal ebbs and flows. And there's always just been that rawness and realness with each other, and like we've really had a safe space between the two of us. So yeah, I love that. I love that about you.
So intriguing because the past years have really been a path of a permission to really feel and move through things, and it's really great to have people around like you to embody the same thing and who really are not afraid of sharing rawness and really deep unpleasant feelings, you know. Yeah,
Yeah, I think
tiny
still
world.
0.1% of the truth, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah. So, speaking of, like, you've already kind of thrown in the word embodiment, you know, which is really something that you're all about. And so, I just want to dive in a little bit to that. Like, for those that have never heard the word embodiment, or for those who've thrown it around a lot, like it's a pretty common word, like embody this, or the full embodiment of something. But why are you so impassioned? Why are you so passionate about embodiment?
That's a good question. Why am I so passionate about it? I think because it really, and that might sound really cheesy, but it was my path of liberation. um, it it has a few different stages, and it's fairly new to me. It's been, I would say maybe 3 years. I mean, it started way back when I first started doing yoga. Um, I I was I was growing up in Germany, a very, mind-centered country, I would say. And I didn't grow up dancing or moving. My parents weren't into that much, and then I started studying literature, and it was all just up here. Like, it was all just here. And then I started doing yoga, and with yoga, I think it was the first time I felt that I had a different language than just words. I felt like, oh, I can move my body, and not in the way that sports moves your body, but in a way where you invite, I don't know, fluidity and grace, and it was connected with the body and with the mind at the same time. And that to me was revolutionary. So it's like, oh, I don't have to separate these things. They can coexist and like work together. Um, and and I didn't know the word embodiment then, and I didn't really think about it much. And now it has become a word that is around a lot, because also science is developing and exploring even more. And I think the first person who started talking to me about the connection between the body and the consciousness, the mind, was my friend Aaron, who I met in Mexico a few years ago. And he's a chiropractor, and he started explaining to me about how 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 you have a connection between your posture, your physical posture, and your emotions. And he always talks about how every emotion has
I
this
as you were saying that.
posture. You're excited, you want to like dive into the phone, you're like leaning forward,
Yeah.
or you're like super, I don't know, back, or you're sad, you're like curling in. I mean, you're a yoga teacher and you teach yin. You probably heard of people say your hips store a lot of emotion. And for a long time, I think, um yeah, that was just, it was around. I mean, it started very early, I think. Yesterday I read something about the early 1909. Someone started talking about this connection. That's information we'd have to verify, but I now it's becoming more and more popular to connect these two things, and to talk about the connection that the emotions have, the mind has, and the body has, and that they're all kind of working together, and you can't isolate them from one another. And for me, embodiment was a journey of movement, really. Like, in yoga, I always felt really stiff, not really fluent in my movements. And then I think the stages were, I traveled to South America 3 years ago, and I saw the people dance there, and it's like, wow, I'm German. I'm like, I dance like this. Hey, feeling
Yeah.
the music. you know. And I mean, I was always obsessed with music, and but I didn't know how to translate what I was feeling into my body.
Mm.
My body didn't, my body's language. Like, I didn't know how to express myself this way. And um so yeah, I traveled to South America where, there's a completely different way of dancing than it is here in Germany. And I allowed myself to express more and lean into unknown territory a little bit. And um, then I met Aaron, and Aaron was talking about this connection between body and emotions and mind. And then while I was still traveling, I met a bunch of people from Vancouver, which is how we met, and they were all dancers. And I've never been in touch with dancers before. And um, my partner at the time, he was a gorgeous mover. And then I met Rachel, gorgeous mover, and it opened up a whole new world to me. So I ended up in Vancouver, and I ended up taking dance classes because I was surrounded by people who were teaching dance or taking classes, and I just put myself out, like way out of my comfort zone. I was taking hip hop dance classes, and that just made me feel so uncomfortable, but it taught me vocabulary. It was like, okay, so that's a way I can move. Oh, okay, so that's a way I can move. Oh, and there's yet another way I can move. And then I was taking contemporary classes a little bit and house and exploring all these different ways to move. And that really helped me to put vocabulary into my body through choreography at first. And then with Rachel, with the jungle dance and exploring just free intuitive movement. And I feel like the more vocabulary I gathered from watching people dance, I learned a lot by just watching people. I get really obsessed with aesthetics and with a certain type of art when I really dive into it. And dance at the time was just, it was mesmerizing to me. So I watched so many videos, I watched so many people dance, and I was just imprinting in my mind first in my mind, and then kind of trying to translate it into my body. And even though it didn't feel graceful at all, it's just like, doesn't matter. I'm so committed to learning. I just wanted to learn. And then, so that was one part of the embodiment. The other part of the embodiment is body work.
Mm-hmm.
Met someone here in Berlin, a lady in her 60s, and she's a breath therapist. Um, so what she does is she's from physiotherapy, and she looks at your body and she sees where you're not breathing. Like she sees
Yeah.
where in your body there's like literally nothing moving. And she sees the connections of the blockages you have in your body, and then she goes right in there like with her hands, and she's like breaking off your armor, and
Yeah.
she's and there's pain, it's painful, and there's lots of tears, and there's lots of release, and there's lots of memories. And that, to me too, that was a revelation, that she can just squeeze a part of my body, and I would just start crying, and I'd look at this body part, and I'm like, wow, really, this sits in there? Like, it wasn't my shoulder, it was my lower back, but still, um that was crazy to me. And then the full circle, to round it up a little bit, was that I met a woman here in Berlin who's teaching dance classes. Her name is Florencia, and she teaches a dance class that she calls Fluent Body.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a mixture of somatic exploration, moving without music, and very much influenced also by some type of dancing that she learned. And I walked out of this dance class, and I felt like, this is the medicine of the world. Like, you don't need any words. I mean, she's speaking a little bit, so I feel like it is a complex of, words and movement and so many other things, and support of other people. Um, so yeah, it's a combination of so many different things, but ultimately I feel like it is showing what you feel. It is not being afraid of allowing your body to express what you're feeling in your mind or in your heart or whatever. Like when you feel chaos, your body just moves. You're like, um I don't know, you stumble or whatever, when you feel really great, you know, you walk tall and you allow your body to walk tall. When you feel sad, you don't walk like that and you allow your body to do that too. Um, yeah.
I like what you're saying right now because I think I even wrote in the post like that, um, you know, this beyond words thing. And because I also teach breath work. And so I love that you found a breath therapist in Berlin. And breath work really, for me, is like the medicine of the world. And I'm the person that pokes and prods at people and triggers emotions in their body. And, you know, I often tell people when they go into breath work, this is a way to communicate with your body beyond words. And so everything that you're saying right now, I'm just like eating up. And I really want to go back to the fact that you talk a lot about how you know, you're talking about dance, but then you keep talking about vocabulary, you know, and you really bring in this element of communicating with your body. And I love, because how many languages do you speak?
4.
Four complete languages, right? And how many like partial languages do you speak beyond that?
No, I think it's those 4. And then partial, I don't know. I would under because I speak French and Spanish, I would probably understand a little bit Italian, but I don't know.
Yeah, but with that, I speak one partial language, so you know, English and a little bit of Indonesian. But even just in learning a little bit of this extra language late in my life, it opened me up to a world of connection with
Hmm.
different people. And what you're talking about now is learning a language, and it's the language of your body. And what it's doing is it's opening up this connection with your body that you didn't have before. And what it requires is for you to learn this new language, you know.
Hmm.
And I get goosebumps thinking about it because you're such a language person, and you're able to connect with so many people in the world because you've taken the time to learn a language that they speak. And now what you're doing is opening up a world within yourself because you're taking the time to learn the language of your body, and you know, it's becoming more one. So yeah, I think I want you to dive a little bit deeper into the language and the separation in our bodies. So what has been your experience since you have been really practicing embodiment in your life and in your own personal journey? What's changed since you started paying attention to this meat sack that you're in and communicating it in a way that it understands and listening to it?
Um, um, that's a really complex question. It's a really good
Yeah.
question. It's interesting what you say with the languages because I was thinking about that when I read your introduction about me, and I was like, oh yeah, but wow, the language of my body was the hardest one to learn. Like seriously, because I felt like when I found the connection to it, and I'm still not saying I'm like super wholly connected because it's a ongoing thing, right? But it was yeah, it was the hardest one to learn, I think. And what has changed? What has changed is that it taught me a different way of expressing, actually. Before, the only way I knew to express was with words, and it
Mm-hmm.
was my intellectual understanding of the world. And I would try to make sense of things by thinking them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at the same time, I've always been a very intense feeler, and I always try to explain my feelings with words. And I think I try to master using words to describe exactly what I'm feeling and why, and you know, and it was overwhelming sometimes for people that
Yeah.
I was trying to talk to.
Oh my God.
And now I have found a space where I can be really intimate with my sensitivity, and I can be really intimate with my sensuality with myself. And I know how to communicate my feelings still with words, but I feel like I now have a way to process them also in a different way that um brings more calm. And I think the experiences I made, especially with the dance class I was describing with Florencia, which she doesn't call it a dance class, she just calls it fluent body. And what I experienced with breathwork, what I experienced with also yin yoga, and what I experienced um, with body work is such a vast and true feeling of centeredness and love. And there's two things that make me realize that it happened. Is one is my voice. Like when I come out of it, my voice is so far down in my belly. It's not up here. It like comes from inside of me. And the other one is that I just feel really calm, and I feel trust. And trust is a subject for me that is it's a tough one for me.
Yeah.
And so it's a feeling that is, it's like your system has been actualized, your cells have been informed about something, that you forgot it or that you didn't know before, and it brings love back into your body in a way that I can't even describe. It's just that kind of love, you can't just think it. You can't just up in your mind and be like, yes, I'm a loving person, I love this and this and this is how centered I am. It's something that you gotta feel. And especially for me, that my body didn't have that information of how that feels. It really needed to be in my body. Like I've been reading so many books on growth and self-development and yada yada yada, and I've understood a lot of things, but I didn't understand them until they were in my body, until I made space for my body to release, to just move completely free and in chaos,
Yeah.
so that information could come in. um and that's like something, that's a feeling that behind the fear and behind the longing and behind all the things that you make up in your mind and that you also feel in your body, behind all these things there is this really calming, trusting feeling of, I'm okay, I'm right here where I am, and that's exactly where I want to be. And sometimes for that there's a thought that has to die for the body to birth a certain feeling, and
Mm-hmm.
a thought has to be integrated with the body. And then when that happens, it's like your mind and your body, they're like, I don't know, they're making love or something, in the best way possible. They're like, okay, we're in this together, and that's just such a beautiful feeling that you can't just come up with intellectually. And that to me was mind blowing, literally.
Yeah. I love everything that you're saying. It's like, how many times have you been told that you need to self-love, or, you got to love yourself first before blah, 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 or, oh, you need to practice more self-love. It's like, fuck off, and what you're doing is you're just like showing your body what self-love is. And I know in my breathwork journey, and I mean, I love jungle dance with Rachel, and I love dancing, and it always really makes me feel good. And what you're doing right now is you're describing like a path to this self-love, which is then essentially like a liberation. I think a lot of human beings are really searching for love deep down, like we all want to love and be loved on some level. Not that that's everything that people are searching for, but I think what screams, like, because on my journey, I definitely, self-love is something that doesn't really come naturally and easy to me, and I've noticed the more that I stop trying to think about it and the more that I can really feel my body, it's just an automatic. I feel more loved, because that's what I'm looking to feel, is I'm looking to feel, it's not, and
Exactly.
so, pardon me?
Yeah, I said, yeah, I was just exactly. Mm-hmm.
Like for anybody out there that's, struggling with self-love and wondering where to start, I love that you're like, start by feeling. You know, if you want to feel love, start by learning to feel.
And that
You know?
might sound very, oh, just go take a dance class and everything will be fine, or just go get some body work done and you feel whole or whatever. But that it's not a quick fix kind of thing. It's not that line that you read on an Instagram post and you're like, oh yeah, right, I remember. It's hard. It's so hard. Like, I had to move through so much shame about how I looked or how I was moving, or I was surrounded by dancers at the time when I started dancing. It was like,
Oh, that's so good.
person in dance class, and like moving to hip hop music. Oh no, no, no. But but you gotta move through that and commit to the exploration. And what I really committed to was to start listening to the stories that my body was able to tell me, and listening to the potential that's in there, because moving is something that we can learn, just like we learn 1,000 other things all the time. And I feel like our bodies, they're such compassionate listeners. They listen to all our thoughts all the time. They just sit and listen. But if they never get to speak, they just bottle it and they bottle it and they bottle it, and they create stories themselves. You're like, oh, my neck hurts, oh, my knees. That's our body telling us a story. And I feel like I wanted to listen to these stories. And in the body work that I'm doing with that lady here in Berlin, it's like, when she works on me and she goes into spaces in my body where I feel pain or any kind of unpleasant sensation, there's a story behind that. It's like, oh, this feels like I've built a wall right there, when she's like in that trying to softening it. And I can literally see the story that my body is telling me. I can see the walls that I built up in my body. I can visualize. And the great thing, and that's where it comes full circle for me, with the poetry and the literature, is that I see it as metaphors. The body is telling us so many stories in so many mesmerizing ways, but often we don't want to listen to those stories because it's stories of pain, it's stories of disappointment, it's stories of grief, it's stories of hurt, so we don't want to listen to them. But it's only when we listen to those that the big love story can reveal itself. It feels like, if I don't listen to these stories, I can't listen to the stories that I want to hear. You know what I mean? And that's something that really shifted for me, because I was suddenly able to dissolve pain in my body. Like, I was one of these people sitting in front of my computer typing my theses and all that stuff. And so I had chronic back pain, the story of everyone in the Western world, working on a computer. And since I started working with my body a lot, and I started practicing waves, that was also a very painful process, but I went through it and I'm still practicing it. And that's an awesome thing to do if you want to start like getting a little bit more fluent in your movement. Like, practice body waves, look up YouTube videos or whatever, but just get into the fluidity of your movement, and that will change everything. And for me, that changed how my body felt, and I feel so free in my body. I'm not going to say I'm old, I'm 31. I'm really not old, but I feel the most free in my body I've ever felt.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love, so I'm loving the way that you're expressing yourself, because you're talking about embodiment, and it's so interesting because you're really like moving, with your speech now. And I'm like, have you always been like that? Have you always like been Italian?
Yeah, not at all. But now when now I have access to this kind of body talk or body movement, and I know how my body responds to certain feelings. Yeah, I can feel when I'm excited, when I'm clenching, and I have a lot of tension in my body. Like, I'm pressing my teeth all the time, and I'm very. But maybe I've done that forever and I've never really noticed, but now I notice all these things and it gives me the opportunity to listen.
Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
love. Can you just give us a brief demo of like these waves you're talking about, or yeah, like you were talking about body waves and how it's helping free you. And I know when I dance, I'm like so like serpenty when I dance, and it just feels really good, you know. And so it's interesting that you're saying that that's an actual practice of yours. So can you, in your sitting down position or however, just kind of show us a little bit of what you mean?
Yeah, I could totally do that. But first, I want to ask, has it always been like this for you? Like, were you always able to move that way?
Yeah. I've always had this when I dance, I always want to move my hips, you know, and then it's really started to more recently in the last few years, I've always wanted to like serpent because my spine's actually quite compressed from like years of snowboarding and, you know, all sorts of different things. And I find when I ride the scooter too much in Bali, I'm like, you know, my spine gets compressed, and what feels really good is to actually elongate it. So when I first get into like a jungle dance session or any sort of dance practice, the first thing, like my hips are always wanting to move, which is, I mean, I've got some serious darkness in my hips, so they're always wanting to get freed. But also there's, even when I just roll my body like this, like I feel the like cracks, and like it honestly feels so good just to like really stretch it. And I'm 32 as well, and it's funny because it's like, yeah, we're not a dinosaur, but like shit changed a few years ago in my body, you know, like something changed. And these movements are like, it's just something that my body really naturally wants to do. So and I find it's like, you know, and then later on you learn about Kundalini awakening and all these different things. And yeah, I love that that's an actual practice that you do, you know. So
I said it's a journey. It's not I walk into one thing and then, you know, for me when I walked into Florencia's class, for example, the feeling I had afterwards, it was also because of all the steps before, all the 3 years before where I worked through, you know, starting to move. And what happened with the waving, I think too, and it's interesting that you described that too, because for me it was not natural. Like my spine was so like this, you know,
mm,
it didn't move like that. It felt stiff, whatever stiff means. And so what happened in that process too, it it's a connection to feminine energy.
mm,
It was a journey to sensuality, and that's a very, not saying woman thing to do, but a feminine energy that also men channel when they dance. Um and so I had to break also all the assumptions that I had about myself as a woman, and how does a woman move, how is a woman supposed to move. And then when I started practicing the waves, it was something very just mobility based. It wasn't like, this is not dancing, this is not being female or feminine. It's just a movement with feminine energy, and that
mm.
was very liberating.
Yeah,
um, but yeah, a practice I could show sitting. I think anything that makes you like, you could just do shoulder rolls and move like this, but everything that kind of moves your rib cage in different spaces, in different directions. So move
mm,
rib cage, but then also what's forgotten a lot, I think, is the neck and the head, and that's also something that's really hard for me to loosen up. And so the full body waves, they start with the head, right? And then you come up and you go down again. But that's really a practice of connecting to the different parts of your spine. And when I started doing that, I was like, oh, that part of my spine, I can't even access that. Like
mm,
I didn't like the mobility, the movement I had in my pelvis and in my lower back was minimal. And so it took me months of very, very slow movement. Like you can do a simple, if you practice yoga, you can do a very simple cat-cow situation. You could just create that, and without just moving in the spaces that you know, and just like pushing your upper back. you kind of try and you work your way from the from the bottom of your spine, you work your way up, and you really don't move another part of the spine until that part hits that part. So you
Mm.
start isolating certain body parts, and that was really hard for me to do. It was hard for me to to move my lower back and not move my chest, and it was hard for me to move my chest and not move my lower back because everything was kind of like connected and you know.
Yeah.
um so I think everything that makes you, that gives you the opportunity to create space in that area and then move to the next area. And for me, that was really a combination of asking for help, going to a therapist, going to a body worker, like really setting these spaces free of emotion that was, you know, stuck there. um and then just really practicing. Like, you can go to a wall, you create a wall, or not, you create a wall, you go to the wall and
Yeah.
you move your body against the wall, you move your chest, and then you go up your belly until your hips meet the wall, and then you go back, and you can practice with that. So you have a reference point that you work with. That's what I had to do. Like, it was as no joke, I was standing in front of the wall and like moving one body part after the other against that wall to like feel the reference of my body, because I could not do it without that reference point. I had no connection, I had no access to these body parts because I've never exercised it.
Yeah, I'm actually against a wall right now, and it's funny because my neck's been really, I've been experiencing a lot of really heavy emotions lately, and moving a lot of trauma actually, and my neck's been really tight. And it's funny because now that I'm against a wall, it's like there's so much like right here that I just like I can't even like touch it against the wall or nothing. Like it's just so tight, and it's just a simple thing. Mm, awesome.
But yeah, I think what I do also to release my neck is I just I use my hands and I like move my
Oh,
towards my hands. I can't isolate my neck when I don't use my hands, but when I know I have to like push against something, then it's easier for me to move that part. And like the cracks and the sounds it makes, I'm like, oh yeah, I've never moved my neck like this.
yeah. This is
Um,
a fun music video though. I feel like
yeah, it's really I feel like for me it was really a combination of many different things. It was a combination of learning, of watching, of listening, of moving through really unpleasant emotion, of taking different types of dance classes to learn vocabulary, of going to ask someone to like put their hands on my body and really help me release things. um, and when I'm in the session with her, for example, when she touches a tender point and I start crying or I start releasing, then she always asks me what's going on, how do you feel, what's coming up. And when I say it and I talk to her and I say what's being liberated in my body, and while I do that she keeps working on the point, and I can feel how it loses its tenderness, like it stops hurting. So it also, I feel like it also needs that combination of feeling it in the body, verbalizing it, like expressing it in different ways, and you kind of have to find your recipe in that. I feel there's no, you got to do this and go to that person and then that's going to happen. It's like, what do you need? Like, you, for example, you already move that way, you might not need standing in front of a wall and like and starting to move. For me, that was liberation, to be able to move my body like this. It's like, oh, I didn't know that was possible. you know.
yeah.
um
But like
so
for example, I'm not really overly connected with my legs, and I'm a very airy person. And so it's funny because like as you're talking about this, I'm like, oh, it would be really liberating for me to be able to take this freedom that's up here, even though it's not super free. Like I wish I could dance like a little bit more, or I could dance more often, you know, and get into my body a little bit more often. But I wish I could take that kind of freedom of movement, but down to my legs, maybe I'd feel a little bit more grounded in my body, you know?
Well, there's a cool thing that you can do, and that's when dance classes really come in handy because they kind of explain these kind of concepts to you, like how the quality of movement. And Florencia, for example, she does that thing where she tells you, okay, now you just move. She makes us move also without music, with music, like all sorts of things. And she would say, for example, okay, now you move, but let your head lead. Like your head changes the direction of your body. Uh,
Mm.
and the rest of the body just kind of follows the head. So when you have a lot of space, you can really, like that. Or you use your right shoulder, and your right shoulder is like the leader. And you can do the same thing with the legs. You can let your feet lead. Stomp your feet on the ground until you find connection to them, and then let the feet be the main focus of your movement. And then your feet, they decide where the rest of the body goes, and it's a really cool thing to do.
Cool.
And it gives your feet and your legs the power to I know, express themselves. They don't have to follow your upper body, but they can lead the way, and then the rest of the body surrenders and follows that lead.
Beautiful. I love what you're talking about. You said a little while back, I wrote down some of these quotes that you've been saying, so there's a lot of gold in here. But you were saying our bodies are such compassionate listeners, but they
Mm.
never speak. And I
They
thought that was,
just
yeah,
they to like they don't get to express. They Yeah, I feel like they speak in if we don't hear them before, they will tell us a story of pain. They're like, here is the red light in your neck or in your I don't know where.
yeah, and I love what you speak to with that because I think, and I talk about it a little bit in yin class, but we, with our mind, force our bodies to do so many things before it's ready. And I was just talking to a girl about this today, whether it be, beating your body into submission at the gym, whether it getting intimate before you're ready. There's a lot of ways where we actually force our bodies to do things when it's not even warmed up yet, and it's not even open yet, and it's not even ready. And then we get angry at our bodies when it's not. You starve your body because you're trying to be skinnier, and then you get angry at it because it's not skinny, or vice versa. Like, there's so many different ways that we are actually so abusive to our bodies. And really what you're talking about right now with embodiment and that feeling of love is because it's a complete change of the dialogue. Because, like, again, going back to this vocabulary, because before it's like, you're forcing your body to do these things, you're forcing it to sit this way because you need to, like, do this. And it's like, when did you ask your body what it wants? And so what you're really speaking to here is like the liberation and that freedom you feel from, like, letting your body lead the way instead of your mind so much. And yeah,
Yeah, if that's what you need. If your body needs to take the lead, then listen to it, and then it'll align with your mind. They're gonna
no, I'm still here. It's
There
just
you go, you're
sometimes.
back. Yeah, so they become equal. So there's this really true connection between the body and the mind, and it's not one telling the other what's up.
Yeah.
um, and in that way, our body and our mind, they can both be in their elements and in their power, because they're both equally important in the system that we are, um and the body can be equally the part that is softening, but it can also be the part that tells you the story about your strength and your power and that massive energy that lies underneath your skin, your whole aliveness. There's a dancer that I really really admire that Florencia also works with. He's called Ohad Narin, and he created this really wonderful language of movement of dance. It's called Gaga, and he said he says this thing about how dancing is like strengthening your engine. And then he says when you strengthen your engine, then heavy things and difficult things, they become a little bit lighter. And that's also something that I learned in her classes, is that even the heavy things, even the dark stuff that tears you apart, that makes you look really ugly, you know, even that is still not extinguishing the power that you have within you. It's always there. It's always there. And to discover that we have these different parts and they all equally allowed to come out and to show themselves, and then reintegrating them and becoming whole and always working on, okay, this is me now, I'm accepting this is me now, I'm accepting this, but then at the same time moving through it and building up the opposite again in every thing that you feel. There's always the opposite of that too, so it makes you feel humble. And in that sensation of being humble, there's this sensation of love and of, you know, connection to yourself. And that brings so many things. That brings acceptance, and that brings joy, and that brings tenderness, and it all comes together as one beautiful thing. It's not like this one's here and this one's here and this one has to go away and I'm pushing this and I'm trying to bring in this, but it's all there together. It's very magical.
Hmm. I love that. And I love what you're saying about like, it's very like, there's no one way, there's no quick fix. Like this whole linear approach is so masculine, and the whole, you know, getting into our bodies and being fluid is definitely inviting through a feminine energy. Um, I love all of that.
Mm.
And I just love listening to you talk, and I love watching you talk, and the way that you're able to express yourself through all of this, because even just watching your movements is so poetic, you know? And so now your poetry has moved beyond words, and it's all really about the way that you move. And yeah, it's just really beautiful to see you so vibrant in this. I really want to start to finish up our conversation, so that I think when you go to like an hour, it kind of deletes the movie. So I want to keep it under that. But can you tell our audience, how do people find you? What do you do? Like how can they bite off a piece of this embodiment that you're talking about? Where do they start? Yeah.
Yeah. So what I do for now so I work as a yoga teacher, but I'm moving more towards the direction of movement and not dancing, but like taking it out of the frame and I'm going to start a training next year with Florencia in this fluent body practice. And for now, I teach yoga and I work as a coach. And so what I do a lot with people too is working on those metaphors. Like you can come with a sensation in the body and describe, and we'll work on a way to what's the word, to trend what's the word I'm looking for, transition, no, that's not the word, to work with that metaphor and create something different, not not like push it away, but we'll find ways to translate it into another image.
Mm.
um, and that's really work I love, because it doesn't work with the body yet, it just works with the mind, which is interesting. In my where I'm standing right now, oops, sorry.
Oh.
It works with the mind and how the mind receives a sensation in the body and what story it creates around that sensation. And so we're going to change that story. We're going to write a new story. Maybe not literally write it. If you want, you could. And then I can definitely give you ideas about dancing, about concepts of dancing, like with the feet moving, we're bringing quality into your movements, and how to integrate breath.
Yeah.
into moving, and because the breath is a very crucial element of sensation and of feeling. If you don't breathe, it's harder to connect with the body and it's harder to feel. And when you start thinking, then you're going to stop moving. And to find ways to like stay in that flow is really interesting endeavor and discovery. And I can definitely point you towards people who work specifically professionally with certain energies, or like Florencia, she also does body work, somatic body work online. Um, yeah, that for sure. Just connect with me, write me a message, and we'll communicate. That'd be really awesome.
Cool.
Mm.
And just to give a little bit of a testimonial, because I've done a little bit of coaching with you, and I really just found that your ability to listen, and not only listen, but to notice what's going on in my face and what's going on in my body, and the feedback that you gave me, it's all starting to click now. I'm like, oh, this is why she's so tuned into like these tiny little things. So yeah, for anybody out there that's curious, please send a message through, and get connected. If something inside of you is happening, I definitely encourage you to explore that and reach out. And yeah,
Yeah,
this was so great. I'm so excited about everything that you've been saying, and there's so many good like tidbits of information in here, and like even just so many different like body movement things that I just want to start doing now. And I just love that you bring light to the value of being in our bodies, because it's something that I'm also very passionate about. And it's, to get super esoteric for a second, it's like, our souls came down here to experience what it means to be human and walk these bodies on the earth. And so I love that, in this time, especially right now with COVID and all the dramas of the world going on, and we're so up here, it's like, get the fuck out of there, get in your body, feel more connected with your life. That's your love, that's your freedom, that's everything that you're searching for. Like if you're lost, start to connect again. And it's just so simple. So
yeah, it's simple, and at the same time, it's not an easy journey. It'll hurt. There's going to be some very unpleasant things, but that's part of the art. It has to be this has to be there too, and really give yourself the permission to feel whatever is there, and to really, and I'm going to say that now, and sometimes it's like, what do you even mean with that? But we can also talk about this, but sit with it, like really sit with it, or it, not giving it any story, but listen to the story it brings to you. If that makes no sense to you at all right now, then please just reach out to me and we'll have a conversation.
cool. Thank you so much for everything today. That was, I'm so excited to re-listen. It was so good, and it just is so great to watch it like literally pour out of you. So for anybody out there that's looking for a little bit more passion in their lives, I think they know where to go. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing your passion with all of us. And
Well, thank you. That's possible.
yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, we'll connect on the back end, and I'm just excited to chat more and follow your journey. And I love watching it transform. So
Thank you. Thank you.
okay,
I love
cool.
you. I'm proud of you for all the work that you do.
Thank you. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely so thank you.
You're welcome.
Cool. Well, so much love. Enjoy the rest of your day. It's nighttime for me, so I'm gonna go eat dinner. But yeah, we'll chat on the back end. And
Yeah.
yeah, thanks again.
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Okay, bye.